Welcome to the press debate. I'm Tova O'Brien.
And I'm Luke Malpass. Now, please join me in welcoming to the stage New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters. And Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson.
Te Pāti Māori's Te Tai Tonga candidate, Takuta Ferris. The co-leaders couldn't make it. Takuta Ferris from Te Pāti Māori, the co-leaders couldn't make it. He is the candidate for Te Tai Tonga. Kia ora, Takuta. And ex-leader David Seymour, come on out.
At the moment, you have the wealthy few paying effectively half the tax rate.
The prison officers that I saw, back New Zealand's first proposals, they say we will have far less reoffending.
Are not generous, they're not big, but every single earner ends up better off.
So if the moana is alive and thriving, the people will be alive and thriving with it.
People are going to be looking for a seriously better government, but they don't want to hard lurch to the right.
Well, the problem is I don't know where he stands on almost any issue.
The 3 years that Aori and Deb have had have demonstrated what can be done from oppositions.
They say only little steps are possible. Rubbish!
I don't know him and I don't want to deal with him if I have to.
Winston Peters brings chaos wherever he goes.
And on that happy note, to get this party started, we will give each of you an opportunity to pitch your party to the people. Starting with you, Winston Peters, why a government with you in it would be stable?
Look, thanks for the chance to be here this evening, but the other Chris's should be here, not avoiding this debate. And the fact is we're 30 years on from our decision to go to MMP. This is not a first-past-the-post environment. But our country's in an economic and social crisis, and they are certainly going to need stability and common sense going into the future. We've just seen a 3-year lurch to the hard left that's unrecognisable for Labour people, and we don't want a hard lurch to the right in response.
Marama Davidson.
Over the next 4 days, we can build the Aotearoa that our tamariki deserve, an Aotearoa where everyone has enough to live good lives, where everyone has a warm, dry home that is cheaper and cleaner to heat, and where there is free dental for all. You have the power to make this happen, and the choice could not be clearer. A national Act New Zealand First government for the wealthy few, or an Aotearoa that works for everyone. That future is up to us. Party vote Green.
Takuta Ferris. Takuta Ferris.
Tēnā hoki tātou. Hei te haukainga ngai Tuahuriri and the people of Christchurch, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Te Pāti Māori stands as an unapologetic Māori voice. And in a democracy, Te Pāti Māori has the right to stand, being voted in by the Māori people. We, of course, understand that our ancestors welcomed everybody into this country under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and we believe that the future is vested in everybody understanding their place, their connection to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and what it provides for them and the future of this country. Kia kaha tātou.
And David Seymour.
Good evening. If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that we can't carry on the way that we are. The cost of living is too high, the streets are too unsafe, and we're constantly divided by our government rather than brought back to our common identity. This election, more than anything, is a choice between more of the same or real change powered by fresh, new ideas. And I look forward tonight to putting the case to you that a party vote for ACT is the way to make sure you get a change of government, a real change of direction, and a stable and united government ready to get stuck in and make the changes this country desperately needs.
Kia ora koutou. We should make the point as well, shouldn't we? Picking up on your point, Mr. Peters, just an enormous thank you to you guys. We know how busy this last week of the campaign is, so we are truly grateful that you did make time in your busy schedules to rearrange things and join us here tonight. Kia ora koutou.
Okay, so we're going to start with tonight with the most important issue that is facing most of us in this room this election, and that is the cost of living. Now, our first question comes from a press reader who sees the reality of this crisis every day.
Hi, I'm Kirsty Arstone from the Christchurch City Mission Food Bank. Last month in August, we've seen 220 new clients attend our new food bank. This is not just clients who are on the benefit, these are clients that are also working. I'm seeing more and more working poor attending our services because they're struggling to meet the cost of living. My question for you is, do you understand the struggles New Zealanders are facing, and what are you going to do about the cost of living crisis that we're currently experiencing?
David Seymour, we'll start with you. What do you think you know about the daily struggle that many Kiwis are facing right now?
Well, I know what I hear from people from all walks of life up and down the country. People worried about having to put things back on the shelf because they won't get through the checkout with the amount of things that they actually need for their family. People choosing between their kids, one having swimming lessons or the other having ballet lessons, and they have to cancel one because they can't afford both as the mortgage goes up. Whatever walk of life you're from, people are hurting. But I also understand that it's been caused by two things. Number one, the government has been spending too much. That's pushed up inflation, it's pushed up interest rates, it's affected mortgages and now rents. We have to stop government waste from day one to get living costs under control. And the second thing is the red tape, the regulation. People spend more time and more money trying to comply with all the bureaucracy this government dumps on them rather than producing things that we can afford. You see, every country's had inflation lately, but it's harder in New Zealand because we went into this inflation period with higher costs and lower wages to start with. That's why what we really need to do is work together to start raising productivity, make the economy work for people, make jobs higher paying, get more investment and innovation so we can truly be first world. At the moment, it feels like we're a bit middle income, and we deserve better than that as New Zealand.
So David Seymour, we're a bit middle income. Less tax, less red tape. Marama Davidson, what do the Greens propose to do about the cost of living?
Well, actually, ACT voted against increasing minimum wages and against living wages. And to people at home, I know you are having to choose between putting kai on the table and paying your bills. I've been there. The Greens have a plan which will mean that 95% of you will pay less tax, and that will mean that everyone is able to put their kai on the table and look after their whānau, and unlike other parties, it is fully costed independently and will be paid for by a wealth tax.
Takuta Ferris, Labor said it will take GST off fresh and frozen fruit and vegetables to help curb with the cost of living crisis. Te Pāti Māori wants to go one step further, taking GST off all kai. Is that feasible?
100%. Te Pāti Māori have championed taking GST off all kai all year, when all of the other parties said it couldn't be done. Slowly they're coming around. Every one of the Te Pāti Māori candidates standing in this year's election understands exactly what it's like to live at the grassroots of communities throughout this country. And not the middle class ones he's talking about, the poor, impoverished ones who have fallen through the cracks over these last 3, 6, 9, all of the years. Our people have been in poverty for generations, and putting up with slow, mediocre, incremental gains forward, it's no longer acceptable for us, no longer at all. We understand what the economic problems are. Our country's had a low-value economic model for generations. No one addresses it. The Māori economy sells the same products internationally at 4 to 6% more than this country sells. We need to move to a model that's higher in value, and we need to have more policies, more people in government that understand what the ground looks like instead of ideas from the middle and above.
And Winston Peters. Now, Mr. Peters, you've committed to a select committee inquiry into GST off fresh food. Won't that just slow down the ability of the government to help people?
Look, the reality is you've asked this question 3 times and you deserve an answer now. The fact is we've got a tremendous cost of living crisis. 30% are not going to make it, they say. Another 40% say they're going to be hard up against it, they just might get there. That means 70% are being seriously affected. We've gone from one of the best cost of living countries in the world to now one of the worst. We've got to address that. Start with the duopoly, have a full-scale investigation into what the Aussies are doing here, and in their purchasing, and then take on the banks that are charging us far too much, as the investigations at the Australian parliamentary level found out about Aussie banks there. They'll be doing it here. Look, Labor promised a grocery commissioner 16 months ago to be in place 13 months ago, was put in place a month ago, and it'll be a toothless tiger. We need some real action on this because people are suffering.
Infometrics analysis shows that on average household costs have gone up by around $240 a week since June 2020. That is not even including mortgages. It is affecting all of us. Just quickly, what is one thing that each of you have changed or perhaps cut back on in the face of the cost of living crisis? David Seymour.
I'm drinking less coffee, so if I look sleepy, that'll be it.
Takuta Ferris.
Buying petrol.
Marama Davidson.
Heck, why are elite wealthy politicians being asked what we are cutting back on? That's not important. What's more important is what we will do to make sure real people have lesser costs.
Winston Peters.
Cut back on the carbohydrates.
Right, I know. Learn something every day. Takuta Ferris, Te Pāti Māori. Actually, let's talk a little bit about the National Party's fiscal plan. It's planned to combat the cost of living crisis. It says that it would give $250 a fortnight to the average income family with kids. They're now saying, of course, up to $250 a fortnight, now that we know it's only going to be for 3,000 families that are eligible. Te Pāti Māori wants to go far further with its tax cuts, giving them to 3.8 million New Zealanders. If Goldman Sachs thinks that National's tax cuts are inflationary, what the hell are they going to make of yours?
Well, they can let us know when they have a look, but what I do know is this. As long as the rich in this country are allowed to get away with hiding their money, building their wealth, accumulating it individually, while the vast majority of this country slip lower and lower in living standards, we will get nowhere fast. And if we think we've gotten this to this point, imagine what the next 3 years will look like.
Okay. Winston Peters, you also want a tax-free threshold like Te Pāti Māori, not quite as vast, up to on income up to $14,000. The major parties have ruled this out right now. Why is it a good idea? How will you convince National, and how on earth are you going to pay for it?
Well, we make our budget stack up, that's why. There's no holes in it, for example, and here's the reality coming here. We've said by, hopefully, 1 April 2026, or at the very latest, 2027. 2027, because we can't do it now.
Not you.
We're seriously in debt, and we've got a massive debt been run up by the Labor Party, going hard to the left, which is unrecognisable, and we're going to have to pay it back. And so we're saying to people, we'd like to make these promises. I mean, you just heard a statement over there. I bet the Maori corporations are shivering in their boots when they heard that, because they don't realise that there are people out there who are making money, and for the advancement of this country, and bringing money back to the family in New Zealand. And they're going to attack them all with a pinko communist-type approach. This won't work.
Woo! What are we, like 10 minutes in and we've got Pinko out there already?
Well, that's what it is. I mean, they've got 1,000 ways to spend money and not one way of making it.
Okay. Marama Davidson made this point earlier. David Seymour, the minimum wage, lifting the minimum wage is another way to get cash into some people's hands. Your potential coalition partner, Old Mate over here, would like to explore raising the minimum wage to $25 an hour. Could you stomach that? Could business stomach that?
Look, I think if you talk to people in small business, they're really hurting, because it's not just people on minimum wage, it's the relativity through everyone they're employing. Now, if you're paying people more because you're raising productivity, and you're actually selling more valuable goods that customers want, then that's fantastic. But what I notice about this discussion so far is that it's all about somebody somewhere's done something wrong. It's the supermarkets, it's the banks, it's the rich. Someone's done something wrong, and if we just went and took their money or somehow punished them, we'd be better off. I want a conversation about how everybody gets wealthier, how we grow the pie in New Zealand. New Zealand, or any country for that matter.
Winston Peters.
Yeah, look.
I've never been in an environment with you where you've politely put your hand up to speak, but given you did.
You didn't put the full equation of that question. The reality is, look at Singapore.
The debate was taking off in the audience as well, and this is your debate. So get amongst, show them love, but keep it clean and respectful.
Now, New Zealand's Drug Buyer Farm Act spends about half the amount on drugs per person than its Australian counterpart. New Zealand's spending on education has dropped down to amongst the lowest in the OECD, and we've been lagging behind in infrastructure spending for 30 years. So starting with you, Winston Peters, what is the one thing that each of you would do to make New Zealand a richer country that is better able to afford top quality public services?
Well, there's no shortcut. The fact is we've got to get into export, but add value to the max so we get the advantage for our businesses, our economy and our workers. Then use your IT to the max because we've got what it takes, but we need these people to be kept in our country. And last of all, make sure you've got proper taxation to get productivity through using new machinery, new technology. These are just fundamentals. But you look, Farmac is not half of Australia, it's 1/3. That's why it's so seriously bad, and the model doesn't work and needs to be got rid of.
Marama Davidson.
Luke, could you repeat the question, please?
What is the one thing that the Green Party would do to try and make New Zealand a wealthier country to be able to better pay for top quality public services?
Well, we know we have got the resources here. We just need to unlock them, and that is why the Greens are proposing a wealth tax where people with at least $4 million worth of debt-free wealth, if they are a couple, will only pay a little bit extra, and that will make sure we've got public health services that meet everyone's need, education that meets everyone's need. We've got it here, everybody. If you like it, we can vote for it.
Okay. So, a wealth tax will get things humming. Takuta Ferris.
Well, look, our country has become overly dependent on internationalisation and globalism. And as long as we're talking about export, I can guarantee you that the people in the middle and the bottom rungs of our society will continue to fall deeper and deeper and further behind. And we're just not happy with that. There's only two things that we can do leading forward from now. We know that not one single party alone will not throw the safety net underneath the cost of life living crisis and look after our people. So we need to, number one, get more money back into the pockets of our people. It's the distribution of wealth. The wealthy have the wealth in this country, and then profits are exported overseas. And as long as that's the model that we are stuck in, we will continue to get the same thing we have gotten until this time.
David Seymour, hold on. Yeah. I'll come back to you, Winston. David Seymour, the one big thing New Zealand could do.
I mean, again, we've got to get away from this vilification. I just make the one point in response to something that Marama said. The ACT Party has over 16,000 people that have given us money in the last 3 years. That's a lot of super rich donors. Actually, for the most part, are ordinary New Zealanders who want to see a growing economy. And how do we do that? Well, number one, we've got to go line by line through the quality of government spending. Right now, there is far too much expenditure that's not producing results. We're spending 30% more per person after inflation than 5 years ago. And we're getting more kids going to school. No, are they learning more? And sadly not. So we have fewer potholes.
So one key idea, sort of
one thing is we've got to go line by line. We've got to understand why the government is spending so much more, and getting so worse results. Until we're prepared to do that, then it's going to be much harder to make outcomes better for everyone else in the economy. And your question's a good one, because if we want more pharmaceuticals, if we want more healthcare, if we want more and better education, you can't have first world health and education without a first world economy. And that's why we have to start thinking about what government's doing with all the money it takes.
Winston Peters, you politely raised your hand.
About 173,000 people are on job seeker. 99,000 are work ready. So why are they not in work? What we're hearing over here is sort of voodoo economics. Somehow we'll get rich doing nothing. And the only way we're going to get rich is get offshore and make money to bring back to the family in New Zealand for its older share, like we used to do when we were number one. There's no shortcut to this. But all we're hearing over here is it's everybody else's fault, and if they could only get control of it, we'd all be wealthy. They're halfway onto being the new Robin Hoods. They'll take off the rich already, but they won't be given to the poor now, I'll tell you.
I'm hands up. I've never seen such a cordial group on the stage. Marama Davidson, you too had your hand up.
It's just when David is talking about people being vilified and having a first world economy, there is no such thing as a first world economy when our nurses, for example, are effectively paying half the tax rate than the wealthiest in this country. That's vilification, is when our people who are working and earning only low and medium incomes are paying more than twice the effective tax rate of the wealthiest few. And David, it doesn't matter how many poor people may have donated to you. Someone gave you a plane and they want something back for that, and it's not your friendship.
Well, speaking of...
you don't have to put your hand up.
All I'll say is, look, I'm not familiar with how donations work with the Green Party, but it's very simple. If people donate to ACT, it's not because we say what they like, it's because they like what we say. It's because they want a real change, not just a change of people, but a change of direction for this country. And I think rather than attacking them, Marama would be better to explain why the Green Party's policies can bring something to the table for the people that she cares about.
And
Doing that.
finally...
Hey,
Finally,
can I just say, Aotearoa is one of the richest countries on the planet. The problem in Aotearoa is distribution of wealth.
Kia ora.
Well,
Now,
speaking of, I'm coming to you, Winston, because this is one for you. Speaking of redistribution on wealth, I've got a question about the Super Gold Card. So New Zealand First is proposing to soup up the Super Gold Card and to give a 50% rebate to people who have it on their rates that you say will cost about $1 to $1.2 billion. Just curious, who will pay for this, taxpayers or councils, and how much of a priority will that particular pledge be in any coalition negotiations you might be involved in?
These are people that paid some of the highest taxes ever in this country, some at 66 cents in the dollar. That's how much it was. They paid some of the hardest time, went through the hardest years, left school at standard 3, standard 4, all sorts of young ages, and slogged their life out. And they deserve to retire in a bit of dignity and grace. Now, can I just say, if they stopped working, if they stopped their voluntary work today, this country would absolutely collapse. Now, all I'm saying is give them some help up to $1,600 on their rates for the one own home they've got. That's all I'm saying.
Lucas, who's going to pay?
Who's going to pay? Would it be the councils that give the rebate or the central government?
No, it'll go with the gold card. It'll be a tax rebate.
Your tax rebate.
When was the last time you used yours, out of curiosity?
Sorry?
When was the last time you used your Super Gold Card?
Well, that's private.
Okay, let's leave it on.
I mean, when was the last time you went to the bank? Did I ask you that? No.
When was the last time I
As they say, behave.
Everyone can use their gold card. I support Matua Winnie and anyone being able to use their gold card.
I'm not disparaging using the gold card. I
Absolutely.
was just, if he's talking up the benefits of it, I'm wondering how often it gets used.
Everyone should.
That's it, I think, for the cost of living for now. We'll get to it a bit more later as well as we kind of work out how some of those policies might get panel beated during the coalition negotiation process. But for now, let us talk crime and justice.
Hi, my name is Talvinder Singh. I'm owner of Mobile Zone in Christchurch. My business was robbed last month by 5 young people. Thousands of dollars worth of goods were stolen. If this happens again, I will have no choice but to close down my business. My question to you is, how are you going to stop these young people behaving like this and things like this happening again in future? Thank you.
Retailers like Talvinder Singh reported a staggering 300 crimes a day to police last year. Takuta Ferris, how are you going to stop these young people behaving like this, as Talvinder asks, and I mean stop them now?
Yeah, well, look, at Te Pāti Māori, we are 100% about early intervention, not early incarceration. And the spike in crime that everyone here knows is around in our society today is happening at the same time where the cost of living is out of control. People are desperate, and in desperate times, desperate measures are taken. So it's not to endorse it. Of course, it's not something we need, but getting hard on the blunt end of justice has never solved the problem. Never, ever. What we need to do...
shut up shop. He's going to have to shut up shop if it happens again. What are you going to do to stop that behaviour or stop it from happening again now?
We're going to build into whānau. we're going to build into whānau, because we can apply all of the blunt measures we like, they won't work.
They don't.
And if you want to see proper change that will have an actual effect in our society, building into whānau is the way.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Marama Davidson, your co-leader, James Shaw, he blamed National and ACT for, quote, filling our headlines and social media feeds with fear and anxiety. Talvinder's fear is real though, right? What Green Party policy would prevent this from happening to him again?
To anyone who has been harmed, that should not have happened. You deserve justice, and you deserve all the support you need to get justice, and everyone must absolutely be accountable for the harm they have caused. But politicians need to be honest that there are no short-term fixes, Tova. I have seen what works, including when we give people hope, when we give people something to lose, a home, kai, a community. That is what stops further crime, and it is those community organisations who bring an offender to face even more properly the harm that they have actually done to communities, and to rectify it directly to those communities.
I'll just put to you though, because one of these early interventions that I think you and Te Pāti Māori are talking about, and some of your policies are aligned with, Labour introduced that fast-track circuit breaker program and launched in Christchurch in June. It has been lauded nationally.
Yes.
But currently in Christchurch there are just 13 children, 6 have not reoffended. That means that 7 have. Is that a success story?
That success that you are referring to, including kotahi te whakaaro, is exactly the example that shows us that good things have been happening in a way that prisons have never, ever achieved. So yes, we need to scale it up. We need Tova, we absolutely need to see that approach where it's everyone working together, police and community organisations, intensive work with not just the offender, Tova, but with the whole whānau, making sure that there is accountability directly to the communities they cause harm to, and giving people something to hope for. That is absolutely bringing down the crime rates.
Oh, I'm coming to you, Winston Peters. A study looking into the relationship between family harm and young ram raiders found that more than 95% were linked to at least one family harm incident before coming to police attention for a crime, and the average age of those children was 4 years old when they had that first contact with police. So what do we need to do to address those social drivers of crime?
Yeah, but first of all, let's roll this back a bit. Look, I was brought up in a very poor Maori settlement. No crime at all. Everybody working. Everybody taking responsibility. Your cousins, everybody taking responsibility. We had a sense of citizenship back then and nationhood. We need that back again. But you've got young children that are being caught. There are no consequences for the caregiver, no consequences for the parents, and they're doing it over and over again because crime does pay. And we've got to make sure that we restore, in this world that's coming, the role of Māoridom itself in the renaissance of greater law-abiding, because it will work. And the very same people there in the Great Maori Battalion and Soho Rawakiso are still a Maori today. But what they don't want is a whole lot of lousy leftist excuses for when Maori I talk to, working 60 and 70-hour week, can't stand these sort of policies, and they tell me so.
Te Pāti Māori, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I'm not sure how connected Korowini is with the Māori communities today, really, to be honest.
Give me a break. Where were you?
Well, I wasn't born then, but kei te pai.
Yeah. And you still haven't landed.
Look, what we understand from decades of this being done is that you will not police your way out of crime.
That's right.
You will not incarcerate your way out of prisons. You will only see change if you build strong whānau.
That's right.
And that is what we will do.
Kia ora.
David Seymour, how will slapping ankle bracelets on these kids as your policy, how will that prevent another generation of these 4-year-olds who are experiencing violence in the home from then going on to commit crimes of their own?
Well, it's part of our policy, but I think the frustration that's built up over a long time is that we seem to be forced to choose between being tough on crime and actually trying to solve the cycle of abuse and violence that causes crime. When you look at what ACT's offering, it's partly about reforming Oranga Tamariki. Karen Chua, one of our MPs, she went through that system. She's got a detailed plan to hold Oranga Tamariki accountable and create more mentorships and more safe homes for kids who have been harmed to go into. It's about mental health and addictions. Brooke Van Velden, our health spokesperson, has talked about how we can make the mental health and addiction dollar go further, as we absolutely must. And it's about charter schools. When we had charter schools, I visited them. I often talked to kids who hadn't been to school for years until they were enrolled at a charter school. So we do have to do much better across all of our social services, but we also have to be clear that there are lines in the sand and consequences. At the moment, we're failing at the social services and we're failing at the consequences. So we say, yes, we do need to increase prison capacity. We do need youth incarceration facilities run by corrections but separate from adults. And we do need to have real consequences for people committing crime. If you're not prepared to do both those things, you won't get anywhere. And finally, when people are locked up, you need to start rehabilitating them. We say, if you go to jail and you want early release on early parole, learn to read, get a driver's license, start on a trade. We need to turn our prisons from universities for crime to primary schools of basic life skills that allow people to go straight. We have to do all of those things. It's not about be tough, be soft, I care more. It's about taking a practical approach, getting stuck in, and making this once again a great place to bring up kids, where it really is safe to send your kids down to the dairy and run one, because I, for one, am tired of visiting dairies, liquor stores, even just in the last week, where people's insurance premiums gone from $1,000 to $10,000 after their 5th ram raid. That's not New Zealand. We all need to get together and get stuck in to bring back the great place to bring up kids we like to think of ourselves as living in.
Rubbish.
Look, I'm just gonna respond to that and say, anyone who thinks ramping up commercial prisons in this country, where 52% of that prison is guaranteed to be Māori, is out of their minds. And really, nobody should be applauding that response.
It's a good point. Even though the prison muster has gone down, the Māori proportion of the population has remained the same. Do we need a Māori prison reduction target, Winston Peters?
Well, we do, but the first thing we've got to do is make sure we put all the gangs in one prison so they can't contaminate and recruit others. And what I'm having over here is sickening in the extreme. Because out there, the ordinary Māori is not talking this gibberish, learned at some sociology department at university. They want real solutions, and we intend to provide them. When we catch that young person, we're going to get their parents and caregivers to court as well, because they're receiving a benefit and we're entitled to a response.
Winston Peters, last month we had a story about an 82-year-old who uses her car for charity work who had it stolen. The impact on her and everyone who depends on her has been enormous. And she's one in nearly 20 people a day in Christchurch whose cars are being stolen. Why, with all these extra police on the beat, do you think that you celebrated and that the Labour government has celebrated that this sort of thing is happening? Why is this upturn in crime happening with all the extra cops?
You mean, Luke, I celebrated and they took responsibility for which wasn't their work in the first place. The reason why it's happening is they're not needing enough police on the beat, out there doing their real job. And we need to get them back there doing that. You can see the parts of the main cities of this country and they're no longer safe anymore. They've got a look that we sort of recognise from other seas countries. This is shocking. So we intend to ensure the police get back to doing their jobs and get 500 more to make sure that it happens.
Luke.
I'd like to come to Takuta first. Te Pāti Māori, do you guys want more police too?
The country needs enough police to look after itself, but what the country really needs is more people helping mothers, more people helping kaumātua, more people helping in mental health, more people producing local jobs so that all these troubled kids can get into work. We have the initiatives. The initiatives are on the ground. Te Ao Māori has demonstrated with immense capacity over the last 3, 5, 6, 10 years that we have the goods. All we need is the resource, and all we need is for the people in power to stop bashing us.
Kia ora.
Marama.
Kia ora.
Marama Davidson, does New Zealand have enough police?
I just want to be clear, there are ordinary, extraordinary Māori on the ground doing the very work that is lowering reoffending, lowering crime, from stopping it from happening in the first place. We need more youth workers, social workers, health workers, working alongside our agencies and including our police. That program that you referred to, Tova, had us over 80% no reoffending. That is far more successful than prisons ever have been. And what's more, when we send kids and rangatahi to prison, we teach them how to be stronger criminals. They learn how to do crime even more. They firm up their network of criminal activity. It is the last place to go for rehabilitation.
This is nonsense. This, first of all, this is a person that said all crime was committed by cis white men. And now she's got excuse after excuse after excuse for Māori. And I'm telling you, ordinary Māori are sick and tired of it because they are the biggest victim.
I'm glad you kept on to that little line for yourself there, Uncle.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it's a kind of nonsense, Marama, that you say all the time.
Actually, I'm happy to pick up on that, Tova.
Shoot.
What I want to be really clear about in Aotearoa is we have, unfortunately, violence, family violence, sexual violence, happens in every community, but is only stigmatised and profiled in some communities.
David Seymour, politely raise your hand.
Just to come back to this question about police, I think we need to take the politics out of it. Every election there's an auction where everyone promises more police. Act says that we should actually link the number of police to the population, 1 per 500, and keep it that level. Once we get rid of those auctions, then we can start asking, how do we make sure that police don't have their time wasted, are available when people need them? Because it's a common complaint. People that get robbed, takes too long for an officer to be there, or they're told that no officers can get there. And I think it's all about how we make sure that they're not chasing the same person that they chased last week that was just released again, and also that they have the right equipment, that the time is used well. So it's a bit more than just an auction about how many police, it's how they're able to use their time and how many times they have to chase the same person they caught last week, because we simply don't have the capacity in prisons.
We don't want to end the segment without talking about the biggest global issue this week, the war between Israel and Hamas. Unlike our Five Eyes partners who have all designated Hamas a terrorist organisation, New Zealand has only designated its military wing as a terrorist organisation. This is to all of you, and I'll start with the former Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Peters. Should we go further? Should New Zealand designate Hamas a terrorist organisation?
Look, we've got to find out the facts, but it seems to me that that is where we're going. But I'd like to know the evidence first before we rush off an answer. But we've always believed across the political divide, whether it's Labour or National in government, in a two-state solution. And the second thing we've seriously believed in is the rules of law for international safety for ourselves. These things are critical, and they've just been broken by a full-on murderous attack. So when we find out, if that is the case, they should be declared terrorists, yes.
And Marama Davidson, I know you don't think we should do everything that our Five Eyes partners should do just by dint of the relationship, but do you think that we should follow their lead in this case?
Violence against civilians, whether that is committed by Hamas or the Israeli Defence Force, is absolutely unacceptable, and all people living in Israel, Gaza and the West Bank have a right to security and life.
To the question though, do you think that we should designate Hamas a terrorist organisation as our Five Eyes partners have done?
If we are going to designate any organisation a terrorist organisation, then we need to make sure we apply that equally to all terrorist acts.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
What does that mean?
So, for example, the Israeli Defence Force has also caused decades of violence. Right now, Winston Peters, there are 1 million children in Gaza whose city is being flattened, and that is unacceptable.
Excuse me. Look, these are people. This is a party with members who put out press statements and what have you.
We're going to get into your members
are straight
too,
anti-Semitic. Straight anti-Semitic. One guy's only been here 5 minutes, right? He's put one out there.
About your
absolutely anti-Semitic. This is terrible for a country that believes in peace.
Do you want to respond to that? Talk to her about your anti-vax.
You are not in a good
candidates.
position to talk about the
Anti-vax?
cuckoo members.
Oh, thank you very much. Can I just say to you that people had a right, as we found out just 2 days ago, when 11,500 people got the exemption from the health department. Did not read that.
So you stand.
And now she's standing here, having covered that all up, and she's trying to make the anti-vax has been a problem.
Okay, let's
Get
back
organised,
to
Marama.
the
I'm
root
very-
question.
Get your
Takuta
facts
Ferris, do you think that we should designate Hamas as a terrorist organisation?
Well, look, the Māori people understand very well what violence and destruction of rights,
Kia ora.
property, and all of those things looks like
Kia ora,
and
Takuta.
is. And people my generation understand what it looks like 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years after the events. And so sanctioning or calling out international acts of crime is something that a country has to take on board. But for us, violence against people who are the most vulnerable in your society or in your country, your broader country, can never be supported. Can never be supported. People's basic human rights, the rights that are gifted to you when you're born, are to live freely, are to live a good life, be able to raise children, feed them well, educate them, and live a life as a whānau. So those are the things that we stand for, and ko Te Pāti Māori.
Not going to make a call on that particular question, though. Okay, David Seymour?
Yes, the answer is yes. Our traditional allies are right. Hamas is a terrorist organisation. New Zealand has stood alone in the worst possible way over the last few days. I thought that tweet from Nanaia Mahuta was a real betrayal of the values and New Zealand's traditional allies. But can I also just make the point that their terrorism is not just affecting Jewish people that have been attacked brutally in the last few days. There are also a lot of Palestinians suffering under this organisation, and I think we need to acknowledge them all, particularly for, from our point of view, many people in New Zealand, many people in the Ipsum electorate, Jewish, many Palestinian people have relatives being affected, and I think our thoughts should actually be with them. What the New Zealand government should do next is actually be proactive as a member of the world community and start asking, how can we help? I think that's what a responsible New Zealand government and a humanitarian New Zealand government would be doing right now.
Thank you, David Seymour. Well, time flies.
When we were having so much fun.
It's been a terrific first half, but we'll now take a 15-minute break. The Post-Political editor, Tracy Watkins, with an expert panel, will be standing by with their hot takes on everything you've just heard. Thank you very much.
Kia ora koutou.
Hello, and I've got here with me tonight Sir Ian Taylor.
Lights gone out.
Yeah, the lights have gone out. Sir Ian Taylor, who's a renowned businessman nationally and internationally, also quite a staunch critic of the government of late, a columnist in the New Zealand Herald. And we also have here Canterbury political scientist, Dr. Lindsay Tiata Otu McDonald. Both of you tonight, or Sir Ian, I'll start with you. We had a lot of people turning up to the debate tonight. I spoke to a few of them as they came in. They were looking for something from these minor party leaders to help them make up their mind on who to vote for. Do you think they would have heard anything tonight that might have changed their mind about any of these parties?
Well, look, I have to refer. Well, first let me give my whakapapa. Ko moha ka te awa, ka haururu te maunga, ka ngati pāhau wera te hapu, ko ngati kānguni te iwi, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And I do that because tonight is a pretty spectacular night because we have got 4 leaders and 2 commentators, all whakapapa Māori. I mean, that is quite remarkable, and I can't remember that ever happening. So it just sort of to touch on your question, I think Tova summed this all up a couple of weeks ago when she said, history will not judge this campaign kindly. I'm 73. This is my 18th election, and I have never seen one that has been so disappointing. No direction, no vision. So just using that Māori whakatauki, ko ngā tahua o tapuai nānahi hei toira ora mō apopo. The footsteps we laid down in our past create the paving stones of where we stand today. And I'd like to address this to Marama Davidson, because, and to the Māori Party, Te Pāti Māori as well. There was this comment today that we are one of the richest countries in the world.
Yeah, I think
Actually,
that was
yeah, the Māori Party. Well, Te Pāti Māori, yeah, Takuta, yeah.
Ferris, yeah.
So I think we need to look at that and actually look at the footsteps as they go back. Let's go back to 1990. In 1990, our gross domestic product, which nobody has talked about today, it's what pays for everything, was the same as Ireland's. Ireland's population is less than us. It was 45 billion in 1990. Let's look at the footsteps through to 2023. Ireland is 529 billion. New Zealand is 250 billion. Nobody is talking about it. And, you know, we talk about a wealth tax, and I guess I can speak with some kind of thing about the taxes because I'm one of the 97 people who signed the document that said I'm prepared to pay more tax if it gets spent well. But paying more tax, you know, Ireland, all the countries that we look to around our population, they do not have a wealth tax. A wealth tax is a redistribution tax. All of them have capital gains taxes. They all have inheritance taxes, but a wealth tax just redistributes wealth, and if you do that long enough, the wealth will go away. And, you know, again, just talking to Marama, as a Māori, I run a small SME. You know, we talk about the corporate taxes of these giant corporates ripping the country off. 90% of the companies in this country are our size or smaller. So we have 40 people. I have not heard any of them talk about SMEs. The corporate taxes we pay would make an enormous difference if they were lower. Somehow it seems, everyone seems happy to go, there are these evil people doing the big taxes, when really what we have to address is how do we make the country wealthier, not how do we tax wealth.
Well, in fact, David Seymour made a similar point. I don't know if you'd agree with it, similar or not, about the fact that everyone here is talking tonight about taking something off others to make everyone else, to make others richer. And he made the point that that was never going to work, that it's going to be about the economy. Dr. McDonald, what was your view about some of those issues that Sir Ian's raised?
I suppose I come at it slightly different in that I don't come from an SME background. Frankly, I've been on the public, I suppose, bosom for most of my life is the polite word. What I noticed is that we're still getting the shopping list, and where I'll pull off Ian's point is that there's still the politics of division. Everybody's going through a shopping list of who they're going to take or who they're going to punish, who they're going to put away, and it's still this policy shopping list. And as you said, when people are coming in, they want to know about who they're going to vote for. And what we know is that people don't really vote on policies. God bless them. I'm glad, given this raft of policies. What they want to know is that when those people get into power, they're going to do a really good job for them. And I still don't, except for the occasional glimpse from each of them, because they're incredibly well trained by now. They've had massive numbers of debates, which I'll come back to a bit later, because it's a glorious celebration of democracy that's going on here, which is wonderful. But there's still the politics of division. There's still a policy shopping list. And I want to know about these people, not the shopping list that they can provide. If I want a shopping list, I can go to the grocery store.
But this is almost sort of like a reflection of the debate between the larger parties too, isn't it? That's turned into a shopping list. It's promises it's either free dental or it's tax cuts. I mean, do you think people, you talked about the disappointment of a lot of people, and is that because they're not being offered any sort of path? They can see the problems, they can see that we're facing difficult times. They're prepared to make difficult choices, like you said, about paying more tax, but they're not being offered those options.
You see, I've seen nearly all of the debates, and I have not seen anything that encourages me to embrace my mokopuna, my grandchildren, and tell them I have just seen your future. It is totally missing. There is no intergenerational planning. You know, New Zealand, they just said New Zealand is at one of the wealthiest countries in the world. 2 weeks ago, the IMF told us that out of 160 countries, New Zealand now sits at 159th in the world for gross domestic product percentage. 159. The only country below us is Equatorial Guinea. That is nothing to be proud of. And to hear Te Pāti Māori say this, and Marama say, tax the wealthy, we are the richest country in the world. No, we are half the GDP of Ireland that has fewer people than we have. They spend more on education, they spend more on health because they've got more. We need to be focused on parties that say, here's what we're going to do to lift GDP, because everything rolls from there. 6% of 500 billion is a lot more money than 6% of 250 billion spent on education.
Would you agree, you know, like in terms of the vision that is
Yeah,
something to vote for?
I think I've gone on the record before as saying that the lack of leadership in this election is frightening. I mean, we understand it because Jacinda promised this vision, and for various reasons, the machinery of government and the Labour cabinet and New Zealand First never quite got full hold of all the levers, and what's worse, never made the priority choices they needed to make. We really could have done with, you know, Te Pukenga or the health system being reformed, not both. We don't have enough change managers for that in New Zealand. But I was going to push back a little bit on Ireland, because Ireland had to go through a really hard time post-GFC to get to there, right? And it is also true, and this is what's really missing from this whole election, is that New Zealand Medical Journal's just published data that shows we saved about 20,000 people based on UK figures during COVID. We also kept most businesses alive with these payouts, and so the reason we have this massive debt at the moment is because of that expenditure, and we will get through that, but we need leadership to know where we're going, both macro and micro policies, as Ian's talking about, and that doesn't really seem to come through except in vague values talk that then goes into little policies like, well, if we let Chinese buyers and tax them, then we'll solve that problem. We don't have an idea about growing enough people, making enough houses in New Zealand, or, I don't know, making us more IT savvy, which Ian knows about.
So, you know, let's go back. So there's Ireland, there's Finland, I picked 3 of them, all around 5 million to 5.5 million. Both of those countries, twice the GDP of us, better education, better health, because they've got more money to spend. So instead of, you know, what I have not heard from anybody anywhere, how do we do what they did? And one of the places we can do that is our forestry. Our forestry has the potential of 18 to 30 billion dollars. What do? We put slash on the ground, wash it out to the rivers, and then we yell at the foresters. We shouldn't be yelling at each other. We should find all the common ground. So what is the common ground for a country? A world-class health system, a world-class education system should be number one, infrastructure and social welfare. We should all find out, we all agree on those. Now let's talk about the how.
You would not find any party
among
any of the ones we've heard tonight, or National Labour, who disagree with that.
That's right.
What we seem to be lacking is that clear pathway that we can all understand to getting there. It feels like no one's quite articulating how we can reach that point.
You have to pay for it. You have to find a way to pay for it, and it's not a wealth tax.
And also, I think something has happened through the 2000s in which we seem to be having a problem with our machinery of government really getting to grips with what ministers want, with what works, and then delivering. And we're not really sure why that is happening at the moment. There's a lot of people talking about it. Clearly, a lot of people in this election are annoyed at the lack of deliverables. You could talk about mental health over the last 10 years.
It's become an industry in itself, talking about these problems and how to solve them. They have, you know, ministries and meetings and conferences. I mean, you know, so, and you're very vocal quite often about what needs to be. What's your one thing? Okay, yes, we need world-class education system, health system, all those things. But how do we get there? I mean, Winston talked in that debate earlier, exports. But the point is, we're entering a period where the world is becoming much more protectionist. The old rules, you know, the WTO, etc., are getting harder and harder for countries like New Zealand to live with them. So how do we deal with that?
We did that ourselves years ago.
Yeah.
So we actually have to start to look at the stuff that the world really wants and what we're good at. And, you know, if you look at COVID, what happened during COVID, what was the last thing we spent money on? It was food. We'd stopped buying other things, food. When we came out of the COVID, what were the companies that came out fastest? They were companies like ours in IT and technology. So the opportunities here are to lift technology, start looking, that's what Ireland, Denmark, Finland, they've all done that, but actually pick where we focus it. So focus it on technology that improves the way we grow food, the way we grow crops to feed our people, and the way we use our forests, which are a multi-billion-dollar opportunity globally. We can lead the world in that, and that's the fastest way to go.
So I'll come in there. And at the end of World War II, Taiwan was an agricultural backwater. Now it makes 95% of the world's microprocessors. That was because the government had the temerity to decide that it could pick winners, and did, and got under an authoritarian government, admittedly, but by now it's a democracy and it's surging ahead. One of our problems is that we're so against protectionism or picking winners because of our experience before the 80s that we're not willing to actually sit around the cabinet table and go, okay, say, that's the industry that's really going to make us money. We're a small country, we actually have to decide. We can't just go laissez-faire, anything's going to work, because clearly it's not right now.
Okay, I think we've got about, I think we are actually just about to go back to the debate. So we're going to join you at the end of the debate, I think, and get your wrap-up points, which I'm looking forward to. Let's see if we hear something more this time that will help us.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks.
Kia ora.
We good to go? Kia ora. Kia ora and welcome back, everyone. I am very pleased to be back for the second half of this debate and to be joined by the press editor, Kamala Heyman.
Kia ora.
As, yeah, Kamala, woo!
Kia ora.
The press, get a subscription. First up, and we're going to tackle some South Island issues, but first up, we've got a question on health from two of Canterbury's leading doctors.
Kia ora, I'm Sue Bagshaw, and this is Phil Bagshaw. Between us, we've been actually working in the health system in Aotearoa for about 40 years now. Phil has started the charity hospital in Christchurch, and he is chairperson of the Charity Hospital Trust. We know that our public healthcare system is broken, with charity hospitals like ours, though, springing up around the country.
So the question is, if you form the next government, will you commit to adequate investment in the public healthcare system so everyone needing healthcare can get timely care?
Now, the Bagshaws have dedicated their lives to helping New Zealanders who can't get the healthcare they need in our public hospitals. David Seymour, can I start with you? Can you give the Bagshaws what they want? Will you support health funding at the level where everyone who needs it can get it in a timely manner?
Well, yes, I can. ACT's the only party that publishes an alternative budget every year, and we index the amount of healthcare funding to inflation and the growth of population. So we're spending more every year to keep up with inflation, keep up with more people in the country. We also need to start thinking about what sort of value we've got out of restructuring over the last 2 years. Centralisation is a bad deal for the South Island in general, and we've spent a lot of time reorganising the back office, but I don't think we've spent enough time on simple questions like how do we make sure that more patients get in front of doctors each day. For example, I hear from surgeons who say my whole list's been cancelled this morning because an anaesthetic technician didn't show up. Now, we got to get back to how do we manage the front line of healthcare to be as productive as ever, because as people have said, we've got first world doctors and nurses trying to run in a third world system, and the next set of change needs to be about how you get more people seen more quickly, not about whether we're calling it DHB or Te Whatu Ora or Māori Health Authority.
That sounds like a staffing issue which can't be solved overnight, would you agree?
Well, it's partly a staffing issue, and yes, we need to make it easier for people to register. Too often there are nurses and doctors who are trained, they're accepted to work in Australia or America, they're bounced from working in New Zealand. We've got to make it easier for those people to work here, and we have a policy to do that. But it's also about organisation, because those same doctors usually run private practices where they would never let a list get cancelled because they can't afford it. And so it's partly about being better organised at the front line as well.
Okay, all right. Well, look, your potential coalition partner might have a solution for you, Winston Peters. You've proposed a nearly $1 billion waitlist reduction fund, which would see GPs directly buy operations and appointments from the specialists. How does that work?
Well, it works like this. First of all, it's not a nice to do, it's a must do. We've got an absolute health crisis in this country, and we need to sort it out in terms of a mini budget before Christmas.
Yes, but how
I'll get there.
Yep, all right.
We are short of 2,000. Can I finish? We are short of 2,000 doctors. We're short of over 4,000 nurses, all the way to midwives and specialists. And we've got all sorts of people waiting now for 8 years for an operation. So this is a crisis you can solve. And how do you do it? Well, initially and right now, by immigration. There's no other way to do it. The other plans that the National and Active got, between 360 doctors, will take 7 more years. They don't get it. And that's how we would solve it, and we'd provide the money to do that, because that would be our priority. And don't forget, our budget is 19 billion less than Labor's.
Yes, but that doesn't actually answer the question, because what I wanted to know is if GPs are directly contracting specialists, how do the most in need get care first?
Well, because the doctors and their profession are required to do just that.
So we leave it to doctors, all right?
It's a part of their oath.
Okay, thank you, Winston. Marama, the Greens are promising free diagnosis and treatment for everyone. That's pretty hard to argue with, but how is that possible when we've got something like 8,000 doctors, nurses and health professionals short in this country?
There's a few things we need to do to make sure that everyone has access to healthcare when they need it, make sure it's affordable and inclusive. And I wanted to pick up that we know that health should be a public common good. Now, what that's going to require is pay equity and pay parity, including for nurses and midwives, especially the difference, for example, with the discrimination and the inequality that Māori Pacific people in rural communities and low-income people have faced. It is the for Māori by Māori solutions that are best able to address those inequities. And no, 9 months of a Māori health authority cannot resolve 180 years of that inequity. But
okay.
Come on,
that's $500 million That's $500 million that they're using, and they won't even release the report on how it's going.
Okay, we're going to come back to the Māori Health Authority. I want to give Takuta Ferris a chance to say something. Takuta, Te Pāti Māori is promising a Māori health card. Can you explain to us how that will work, and does that work with the Māori Health Authority or independently of it?
Sure, so what it is targeting the problem that Māori have, which is if our kids get sick, they don't take them to the doctor because it costs too much. Whether that's true or not, okay, that's the reality for our whānau. What we know is that there's money dedicated to Māori in the system. It's attached to your NHI number, and we would quite simply put that money on a card and stick it in the hand of the whānau member. That way, when their children get sick, they're not thinking, oh, have I got the money to take them? They just think, yes, I can take them.
How have you costed that policy?
The policies have been fully costed. Right. The money is already in the system. There's $411 million in the system attached to Māori people today. We would take that money and stick it in cards and give it to our people. We've already spent it. What we've spent is near on $1 billion trying to establish something that would undo intergenerational underinvestment in health. And we're going to get rid of it after 9 months. The report wasn't triggered 1 year in, it would have been triggered 9 months in, so we know where that's leading.
Okay, David Seymour, just to come to this, Takuta Ferris makes the point that on almost every metric, Māori are underserved in our healthcare system, and their statistics in health are poorer than Pākehā on almost every measure.
That's need. What we're talking about there, David, is need. Māori need.
Yep. Is it fair that Māori rangatahi are going to lose their grandparents 7 years earlier than their Pākehā friends?
Well, it's not fair that anybody does, but I just make one point. There's something
Well, what
missing.
about Māori? The question's
there's
about
something-
Māori.
There's
Let's
something
hear the
missing
answer to
from
that.
that word, which is on average. Now, each of us on this stage have Māori ancestry, and I suspect we may have quite variable healthcare needs. And my point is that there are Māori people who are doing very well, thank you very much, don't need any extra assistance. There are non-Māori people who do need extra assistance. And when you start lazily and divisively grouping people by their race, a few things happen. One is that you miss out on people who do have needs. You patronise people who don't have extra needs, and you divide everybody. We've got to stop thinking like this and make sure that our public services are delivered according to need, not race or culture.
Well, haven't we been doing that for decades?
I'll respond to that. When political parties deliberately conflate Māori issues, conflate and compare Māori issues with issues of race and ethnicity, they are deliberately erasing the Treaty of Waitangi.
Absolutely.
Deliberately.
Winston,
this guy's leader said that Maori have superior DNA. Straight away, he's talking bull dust, but he got away with it. If that was the case, they wouldn't need all the treatment because he was just lying when he said it.
Well, it's got nothing to do with DNA. It has a lot to do
That's
with
what he said.
political history.
Rather than talk about DNA, can we come back to the Māori Health Authority? Winston, you have said that a Māori Health Authority will not survive in any government that you are a part of.
Precisely.
Why not give it a chance? 9
Because
months,
they've spent
9 months.
Because they've spent $500 million. That's $500 million already. The report that they've got there is a shamed report for the whole operation, and they want to go on saying by Maori for Maori, accepting ordinary Maori out there are not going to get first world treatment that way. And let me tell you something about real Maori. If they were going to hospital and their wife was a European or vice versa, they would not think they were entitled to an operation first. That's not the way ordinary Maori think, but these radicals do, because they are superior elite Maori.
Right,
Excuse me.
This is yes, Marama.
Oh, yes, we are all superior Māori. Thank you very much. I just want to be really clear about any one person thinking they own ordinary Māori, and when we highlight and make the false claim that some people are going to miss out when we rectify inequalities that have been long-standing for nearly 200 years, that is absolutely race baiting. That absolutely is race baiting.
You started.
Okay, thank you. I have to scurry along. All right, look, I'm going to try and get a quicker answer out of you all, but we're going to stay with health very briefly if we can. Now, Christchurch has the highest death rate from vehicle exhaust fumes in the country. More than 300 deaths a year in the city are attributed to traffic pollution. That number nationally is about 2,200, 10 times our annual road toll.
Whoa.
Takuta Ferris, what would you do to help reduce traffic pollution? One thing that you would do.
Free public transport.
Free public transport. David Seymour. Thank you, Takuta.
I think, first of all, it's interesting to say public transport should be free. What I find it's the convenience and the frequency that is the biggest deterrent to using it. But
and
in
would you
terms of what we
invest
can
in
do
public transport to make it more frequent?
Oh, our alternative budget certainly does invest in public transport.
In Christchurch?
Well, actually, all up and down New Zealand. So Christchurch is very much part of New Zealand. In fact, a great part of New Zealand. But in terms of what we can do to reduce these deaths, it's a tragedy. But one thing that we shouldn't do is actually make it harder for people who are already struggling to get around by banning or taking away their cars. It's working class people who need to get to work.
I'm trying to get this one quick.
Well, we can't. Well, we shouldn't do it.
Moving on.
Thank you. Winston, one thing. All right. There's some people in the crowd who would like us to restore passenger rail, Winston.
Well, first of all, I would say the answer's in public transport. It's a no-brainer. But also, how come the Greens, when they got the EVs, went and got all the expensive ones for the wealthy suburbs and the poor people can't buy them? This is so fundamental. This is so fundamental. We should have got it at a level 25 to 30,000 that poor people and less wealthy people could buy. But no, they're buying them at $70,000, $80,000. And of course, we've got them in the wealthy suburbs of Auckland, But ordinary people are not getting them at all. They're not here in Christchurch either.
Okay, thank you, Winston.
Well, that's a nice segue into our next section on climate change.
Now,
Marama Davidson.
Going straight to you.
Marama Davidson. The Green Party is rightly hot on the science behind our climate change goals. What we are curious about, however, is what is the Green Party's position on gene modification, and which scientists currently say that our laws are not fit for purpose, and which could help to reduce our emissions, particularly in the agricultural sector.
Firstly, Luke, we cannot keep falling back onto the hope for some mystical technology that is going to bring down our big emissions, which are largely across the sectors of transport and agriculture, and we cannot rely on just technology to do that work for us. I didn't have a go on public transport, and I'm really upset about that, so I want to include that because it is also part of our climate emissions reduction in public transport. So yes, invest in it, make it cheaper and faster, also in safer walkways, cycle lanes and rail, and this, it's about, Kamala, it's about giving whānau more choices of how to get around in a way that will put more money in their pocket and protect Papatūānuku.
Yes. David Seymour, the ACT Party is proposing a tax refund for all New Zealanders from the revenue that's currently brought in through the emissions trading scheme. Why wouldn't the money be better spent buying emission reductions as the government is currently trying to do?
Everything that the government spends money on trying to bring down emissions is actually more expensive than the carbon price set by the ETS. We know that, because if it was reducing carbon, taking carbon out of the air for less than the ETS price, the government wouldn't need to do that subsidy. But if I could pick up on something we just heard, you know, we're worried about poverty and we're worried about climate. The only way we're going to solve poverty while also reducing emissions is through better technology. And that's why the ACT Party says that we're going to have a responsible, politically durable, simple and efficient climate policy. And how do we do that? We tag our emissions to our top 5 trading partners' emissions, and then we let people choose within that constraint what technologies they invest in. Do you commute to work? Do you insulate your house? Do you get a heat pump? Those are choices that people should be allowed to make. We shouldn't have a huge bureaucracy deciding what gets invested in by government.
We leave it to individuals.
Because individuals make better choices about their own lives than government does 9 times out of 10. And I also make the point about adaptation. I visit Hawke's Bay. I visit Brisbane.
Come on. Takuta Ferris, quick.
Yeah. Look, we have to reduce emissions.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
People will argue whether our footprint is big enough to make an impact. Well, here's the news. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you live on the East Coast or you live up north, you've experienced this year what it means. If you come from the East Coast of this country, you know what changing weather patterns and rainy summers now look like. Those things aren't going to change. They're going to increase. And so the more we deny that, and the more denialism there is, I mean, the denialists will get moved. They'll get moved when it's their house that gets flooded.
Yeah.
They'll get moved when it's their house that gets burnt down. But, you know, we have to reduce emissions, and we also have to protect what we have left of our wild spaces in Aotearoa, because they're going straight down the gurgler with the emissions, with everything else that's bundled up in this conversation.
Kia ora. 15 seconds for Winston. Okay, we've got just 10 seconds left in this climate change discussion. Winston, would you like to explain?
If you think the subject's only worth 10 seconds, I won't bother to answer you.
Won't bother answering. Oh, can I have the seconds?
That's not fair.
No, come on, Winston. Yep, all right.
Well, look, let me tell you.
How are we going to tackle climate change?
We had S Valley in 1938. We had it this year. We had 1938 as well. Here's the thing. We've got to play our role internationally. But we went to Paris, they all said food production would not be affected. These people are going to take $16 to $32 billion out of our economy into some Wall Street trading scheme when it should be stay here for us to fix the problem ourselves.
Would you support changes to our genetic modification laws to allow...
We've got to look at everything now. Breeding change, pasture change.
So you're
We've got to look at genetic modification.
You're a no. Marama, you're a no for GE.
We're yes.
No,
Are you?
sovereignty.
Or you're not sure?
No, we have supported the review on the current regulations
review.
to be able to keep things in the lab and make sure that it's safe.
Takuta?
No to GM, yes
No
to
to
Kai sovereignty.
It makes zero sense to put the most efficient farmers in the world, New Zealand farmers, out of business so that people who emit more overseas can take their place in the global
Climate
economy.
change will put them
That's
out of
why we
business.
have to make sure
Climate
that New
change
Zealand
is what
farmers
will
don't
put
face
farmers
the
out
tax
of
while their
business.
competitors around the world do. That should never happen. And then we should
Madam,
be
you'll
equipping
have
New
tens
Zealand
of millions
farmers
of people
with
starving.
the technology to
Climate
increase
change will
production
have
and reduce
tens of
emissions.
people
Listen,
starving.
Technology can allow both those things to happen at
That's
once.
your
We
politics,
can
Ross.
have win-wins.
Win-
We've got to stop squabbling and work together to solve these very urgent problems.
Well, I think we can all agree with that, David Seymour. Thank you. And look, it's a really important subject. I'm sorry we've had to cut it short tonight, but this is all the time we have on that topic. So I'd like to invite Tova back to the stage to talk about the shape of the coalition negotiations, a very important subject
I think
for
it's
tonight.
another example of the risks that New Zealanders see from a coalition of chaos.
Chris Hipkins, who can't run his own cabinet and his own caucus, and, with an absolute majority in the last 3 years.
What it shows is that a national Act New Zealand First government would indeed be a coalition of chaos.
3 years of this malarkey with this government, and a coalition of chaos with Te Pāti Māori, the Greens.
It seems that Christopher Luxon's current strategy is to assemble a shaky coalition of chaos.
It would be bad for New Zealand is 3 years of a Labour, Te Pāti Māori and Greens coalition of chaos.
David Seymour, Winston Peters, we've kept you separate tonight because you may be spending a lot more time together over the next few years. Right Bloc, convince us that you two plus the Nats wouldn't be a coalition of chaos.
Look, it's just panicking, it's scaremongering, and I can assure you, right here, right now, there'll be no other early election after the 14th of October. Our job is
that
to
your
be...
commitment? That is a promise that will not be going back to a second
Can I finish?
election?
I'll do the talking for New Zealand first, if you don't mind. The media have tried the whole campaign to speak for me. I'll do it now, Toby, if you don't
Chris
mind.
Luxon was the one, the National
Here we
Party
go
was the
again.
one putting forward that
Here we go
proposition.
again. I'm just a nice person. I'm not interfering with you and arguing with you, am I? I'm just saying to you right now, we need to stop the scaremongering and get real. The public out there want a much better government, a much stable government that's oriented not to a lurch to the far right now, after the far left of the last 3 years has been such a disaster. They'll need experience, need common sense, and I'll give you this assurance that I've put out over and over again, and Jim Bolton, Helen Clark and other Labour ministers have said, I can be trusted against all your speculation, so stop it now and relax.
Well, I mean, I'm quoting someone here on the stage, take a pick who it is. Winston Peters is the least trustworthy politician in New Zealand, David Seymour.
Yes. I think, look, so, look, here's the challenge.
What did Jim Bolton say?
Everything that we've talked about tonight is serious challenges that need to be overcome for New Zealanders' welfare. And at the moment, you have a very clear choice in this election. We need a change of government and a change of direction powered by fresh new ideas. And we need a stable and united government. And the way that that can be achieved, if you listen to what Chris Luxon's saying, if you listen to what I'm saying, we both have a strong preference to form a government together and get stuck into the challenges that New Zealanders face with the cost of living, with crime, with
if that's
division.
your preference, what do you call that?
Well, I've also been very clear throughout this year that we respect the outcome of an election and will work with the Parliament that the people elect, but also that we have a strong preference to have an national coalition. It's as simple as that.
Tova, none of these people have been in cabinet before. They'll need some experience, for goodness sake.
I think if you come back to what I said
And I'm
earlier,
happy to offer it.
You know, we do have some serious challenges, more serious than we've had for many decades. And the choice in this election is really one of more of the same. Well, we can't go on like this.
Kumbaya,
we need
kumbaya,
some real change,
kumbaya, thank
and
you.
that's what we're asking people to vote
Left Bloc, convince us. convince us that you won't be the coalition of chaos, the claim levelled at you from the right bloc?
I've got a couple of things to pick up on. First, it is not a fresh idea for the elite wealthy donors like ACT has got to want to protect their wealth and to want to buy an election. That's not fresh at all. Secondly, right now, Luxon is pleading to the country, oh, I can't handle Winston, and is holding everyone blackmail to saying, oh, please, it's going to be so bad, I cannot handle Winston, you better make sure you vote for me. That does not show his strength of leadership at all. Thirdly, the Greens have now got 2 terms, 6 years, of showing that we can work in Cabinet, work with Labour and Te Pāti Māori, the most climate action in the past 6 years under James Shaw than the past 30 years of action.
I'll come to you in a tick, Takuta. Do you, I mean, to Marama's point and her very compelling Chris Luxon impression there, are you offended, Winston Peters, that he is painting you, that Chris Luxon and the Nats are painting you as this agent of chaos who's going to force us into a second election?
Oh, look, I've been demonised, marginalised, Cinderellaised before, and it's never beaten us, and it won't do it now. But can I just say, this Green Party here has been around for 51 years and has never been in Cabinet. Now, maybe they're just a waste of vote.
It's time. Now is the time.
Waste of vote.
Hey, kia ora. Look, what I can guarantee everyone, and everyone probably already knows this, is that it's the thinking and activity of previous governments that's got us into the predicament we are in now. And it will not be the same thinking or activities of those governments that break us out of it. And so Te Pāti Māori are unapologetic in our stance for the 50% partner to Te Tiriti or Waitangi, who has suffered underdevelopment for as long as we can remember. We stand for a country that represents itself better. There's commonality enough across the other parties to work together that's easy to see.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Now, David Seymour, your proposed referendum on the treaty is now bottom line, right?
Here we go.
It's a very high priority for ACT, but we're not a party.
If Christopher Luxon says no, and he has publicly said that he would not be keen on that idea, he said he thinks it's divisive, what would that then mean for your coalition negotiations, and your confidence in supply arrangements?
Well, it means that they'd have to do other important priorities of ACT, but I don't see it getting to that because, as I've said, and I apologise for the imagery, and Amanda Luxon doesn't like this, but I see it as a kind of marriage. It's a relationship where Chris and I, we got to keep our own identity and purpose while making the relationship work, and I think by doing that together, we can make huge amounts of progress for New Zealand, our 2 parties. I think we're going to end up in a much better space than we are right now through problem solving, knocking off one issue at a time. Now, I know there'll be people who want to get into the political commentating, but the question is, how do you get a strong and united government that really does change things? And ACT is the common denominator in that, and that's why we ask people who know that we can't go on the way that we are. We can't afford more of the same. In fact, it's too expensive not to change. That's the people who are asking to give their party vote to ACT.
Takuta Ferris, Chris Luxon says that he supports bilingual names on government departments, but it has to be English first because people are confused. Is it that confusing? And what do we do perhaps to help those people who maybe are finding it confusing?
Oh, look, not at all. Not at all. It's not confusing and it's a distraction, really. The core problem when it comes to this conversation in Aotearoa is that there's been a dominant treaty partner for about 163 years. A dominant one. You know, Aotearoa wasn't settled by conquest. The big army didn't roll in and take over this country. The British were invited in and an agreement was struck. And the fact that we're talking about referendums on the treaty just demonstrates how much more we have to learn as a country. You can't referendum a treaty away. It's a permanent fixture of the constitution of our country. And it is not going anywhere. You know, if I think back to the middle of this year, one of the leading economists in Aotearoa described my mate over here as economically illiterate. And I can guarantee everybody in this room and everyone watching that he's treaty illiterate as well. And it's a disservice. It's a disservice to our people, all of the people of New Zealand, to let it continue.
Dame Whena Cooper. It's 1990, she said, we signed the treaty to be one people. You got Sir Peter Buck, you got Moai Pomeroy, you got Sapani Ngata, and a great man called Carroll before that. These are geniuses compared to these people rewriting history and talking bull dust in the university. And it's not a partnership at all.
Speaking of rewriting things, you want to go back through all of those government departments and scrub the te reo names from them.
Because you've got a...
How much is that going to cost?
Because you've got a plain language act.
What's the
Hang
point?
on, can I finish? You've got a plain language act that says that people should be able to read the law. Now, once you get reading the law in plain language, all of a sudden you get the Maori section, nobody understands it. Don't you get what I'm talking about here?
There's more in unity going forward than division. There's more in unity. Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the unifying document, the unifying document, constitutional document of this country. Let's spend more time learning about it than arguing about it based on facts that don't even exist.
Now, we've talked a bit about...
He said that
we've talked a bit about Winston and David and how they might sort of, rub along together. Marama and Takuta, obviously, should you end up in government, it would overwhelmingly likely be with the Labour Party. If you're in a position to do that, does that mean a wealth tax?
If people want it, if people like the idea of free dental for all, of an income guarantee, of stronger climate action, of warmer, quality, affordable homes, then they can vote for it. No politician gets to remove the power of your vote. If you want it, vote for it.
Right, you all know by now we're the unapologetic Māori voice. And so we're in Parliament to break Māori out of intergenerational poverty. And the wealth tax will do it. So absolutely, yes, there will.
So, Chris, and I put this to your co-leader, and I put this to one of your co-leaders, Debbie Ngata-Wipaka, as well. So are we calling Chris Hipkins a liar then when he goes out there and says categorically a wealth tax will not happen under my leadership?
He means what he says, but I mean what I say. When we have an election to have, it's only 4 days. We can all chill out over it. It's going to happen real soon. There's an election to have. Then we can see, and it is the country and the vote that gets to decide what gets prioritised on the table. And I am asking for people to make sure you are voting to rebalance wealth in Aotearoa so we can finally ensure that everyone has what they need to live a good life.
Kia ora, kia ora. Look, for us, there's no categoric in a negotiation.
Fair. Okay, we're going to move on to some of the questions from the floor now. Thank you very much for submitting so many great questions, and it's very clear as well that there are keen supporters from each of the parties that are represented on stage tonight. I think that the first one we should pick up on, Luke, which seems very pertinent to this audience and just very pertinent to this election. One policy each that your party has specifically for Christchurch. Whoever's got the best one, go first.
Light rail in Christchurch.
I think the challenges that Christchurch face are similar to many other parts of the country, but for each region of New Zealand, we're committed to a partnership between central government and local government. But, I don't think Christchurch is that different. You're being very mean to Christchurch. So getting infrastructure built in each region in a reliable way, that is important for Christchurch and every region of New Zealand.
Nothing specific for Christchurch from David Seymour? Go ahead.
Look, all these years on, complete the Christchurch rebuild was a priority. That's number one. Number two, get ready for the Commonwealth Games in 2026 because it'll be held right here. And on the 84 model of Los Angeles, it'll run at a profit. The Commonwealth already owes us from Melbourne the money for it started off. And let's signal to New Zealand that Christchurch is back, the South Island's back, and to the world that New Zealand is back.
GST off Kai for everyone in Christchurch that needs it.
Specifically for Christchurch.
That is.
Yep, Christchurch will benefit.
I'll grab the next question, which relates to climate change, and it's how does your party plan to prepare for and fund managed retreat for communities affected by climate change and flooding? We'll start at the other end this time. Mr. Peters.
Well, we already started. In the Hawke's Bay, the parts that survived were built by the Provincial Growth Fund. The stock banks were there. Where they failed was the failure to examine the tree slash that should have been moved and a whole lot of things that should have been done earlier. It was all foreseeable because that happened in 1938.
Kia ora. I want to pick up this one from Oliver, age 12. Where did it go? How will you integrate Te Reo Māori more into our daily life, David Seymour?
Yes, I'd like
Well,
to.
kia ora, Oliver. I don't think that that's a politician's job. I think that Te Reo should be available at schools, but I don't think politicians should be changing the way people speak. And when it comes to government departments, I think people have a right to be able to
Changing the way
navigate
they speak.
their government. So I believe in choice. I don't believe in force. But Oliver, if you would like to learn Te Reo, then you'll be supported to do so at your school.
Marama?
12-year-old Oliver, thank you very much for that important pātai. It is clear that when we ensure that Te Reo Māori is a core subject across our schools, we will love Te Reo Māori into our tamariki and mokopuna. It was removed from my nana with violence, but it is not violence that is going to put it back into our communities and our generations. It is aroha. And to our elderly generation, your mokopuna are already enjoying and loving using Te Reo Māori, and long may that continue.
Kia ora.
We have another one from Anonymous. Will you commit to adjusting tax brackets yearly to inflation? Takuta Ferris.
Yeah, we have a full suite of adjusting tax brackets to do better for all of our people. Hoi ono ko tāku mō Oliver, mā Te Pāti Māori e whakakahei Te Reo Māori I roto o Aotearoa. And, you know, I'd just like to say to everybody that there's nothing to fear in Te Reo Māori. You know, and there are literally an army of young Māori people that speak Te Reo Māori and non-Māori people that speak Te Reo Māori. So kia kaha Te Reo Māori, tātou mā.
Can I pick up on one that I did see on Slido earlier, Winston Peters, your toilet policy to exclude trans women from women's bathroom? How much of a priority is that? Are we talking first 100 days? Are we talking if you don't get it, you're going to send us to a second election? What's happening
Well, before we do that, we're going to get back to the Māori language, because I was there when Kohongo Reo was started from Parliament, right? Second thing, I think it's a great intellectual muscle builder, and that's why Oliver, if he wants to pursue it, should have the chance to pursue it. But don't ram it down people's throats. Now, the second thing I want to say is the tax brackets will kick in. The tax brackets will kick in, inflation adjusted at 2027. That's in our manifesto. And now you're talking about the toilets. Well, I want women and girls who go to a toilet to be safe. And in their thousands, they've written to us. In their thousands, they've written to us saying they don't feel safe. And particularly since we've got the opportunity, you've got men's, you've got women's, and you've got unisex. What's the problem here?
Okay, we're going to wrap things up now. Just very quickly, can I get a yes or no on a 4-year term from each of you? We're all yeses here, aren't we?
Yes,
hands up.
I have
okay.
a
There was another question in Slido.
right now.
There was another question in
Look,
Slido as
we
well.
should all agree, but ask the public. The public should decide this, not us.
Okay, and just quickly, there was a question in Slido as well that I really want to get to. Should there be an upper age limit for politicians? Any of you can take that
one. No.
You know something?
No.
That is just prejudice writ large.
I
Can I
agree.
just say something?
I agree.
Can I just say something? You might have a problem with working for a long life, but I don't. And let me tell you, in this country, hundreds of thousands of elderly people keep this country going every day, and you're showing us sneering contempt which does not befit you.
Okay, well,
Tova,
that is it from Tova and I for the evening. Thank you very much. And please welcome back to the stage, Kamala Heyman.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Koso.
Have their 30-second closing. 30 seconds.
Wrap up. Yeah. Kia ora, thank you. Now, thank you so much for a very spirited debate tonight. I want to give each of the leaders 30 seconds to wrap up, say anything you haven't already covered preferably, and keep it to 30 seconds. Can I start with you first, please, David Seymour?
If you remember one thing tonight, we're all here patriotic Kiwis that want a better tomorrow. We just disagree about the path to get there. Another thing we agree on is we can't carry on the way that we are. This election, if it's about anything, is about whether we can afford more of the same or whether we must change. We must change the government. We must change the direction with fresh new ideas to solve our most urgent problems, from the cost of living to crime to social cohesion and division that's happened under this government as it's emphasised our identities more than our common humanity. If you want that change and a stable, united government to get stuck in and deliver it, then a party vote for ACT is the most powerful thing you can do to get it.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you. Takuta.
Kia ora tātou, and kei te motu tēnā tātou. So to everyone in Aotearoa out there, Te Pāti Māori stands to represent the voice of the Māori people as the democracy decides or defines. But just remember that what's good for Māori is good for everyone, and Te Pāti Māori policies are aimed at raising the collective, raising the collective. People who have built, illustrious empires in our country are more than happy, or will be more than happy to share that with the rest of us. In Aotearoa, they could be much better, and Aotearoa hou, so vote for Te Pāti Māori. Regardless of whether you're Māori or not, vote for Te Pāti Māori.
Kia ora, thank you. Would you like Winston to go first?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Winston.
New Zealand First Rise has been met with political panic, scaremongering, and worse still, an attempt to deny the people their voice. I want to say to people tonight, it's been great to be here, but more importantly, 28,000 New Zealanders gave you, and gave their life, they gave you a vote when doing that. So they sacrificed an enormous amount. Look, but however you vote, please get on the roll and get out and have your vote. And make sure that the politicians get to respect that you're the master here and not them.
We can all agree with that.
I agree with that.
Winston. Marama.
For decades, the major parties have failed you. Food, rent, mortgage payments and power are going up. Extreme weather, hyped up by climate change, is devastating communities. This is not an accident. Political decisions got us in this mess, and political decisions must get us out. A party vote for the Greens will put more Green ministers at the decision-making table, where we can make sure everyone has enough to live on, and take climate action that will make our mokopuna proud.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Well, look, what a wonderful night it's been. We could talk about these issues for much longer, but you've all been very patient. Thank you to all of our politicians, David Seymour, Takuta Ferris, Marama Davidson, Winston Peters. Thank you for taking part in this event tonight, and I also want to have a special thank you to Luke Malpass and Tova O'Brien for their questions, to Dave Brennan for the wonderful karakia that opened the night, and most importantly, thank you to our audience for taking part tonight and being such a lively crowd. It's been a really great night.